There are two NL Central teams that need to just go for it in 2023. Stop obsessing about StatCast. Forget fake FanGraph formulas. You won't need to wait or expect what we discuss here on Central Intelligence. For real news and stories from the NL Central, it's time to open the files at Central Intelligence, an OK Baseball podcast presented by Slasher Sports. New episode lineups get posted Thursday mornings on the OK Baseball podcast feed on Spotify, as well as on the OK Baseball podcast YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe so you never whiff on new content. My name is Steve Heck, host of Central Intelligence. This week, we're going to talk about two teams that should just go for it in 2023. If you look closely, I'm wearing the hints of what two teams need to go for it in 2023. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, if you're listening to it in podcast form, use your imagination about what I'm wearing. See if you can guess where I'm going to go later in the podcast. But first, let's reopen the cases for the week that was in the NL Central. Our first investigation is the trade last week between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, I'm sure that sends chills down the spines of Bucco fans, remembering how Eric Neander just pillaged and raped his way through the Pirates organization, getting Austin Meadows, Tyler Glasnow for Chris Archer. That deal, one of the worst deals in Pirate history, certainly in recent memory, but I can't think of many worse deals that they did other than maybe the Joey Batista to Toronto. But it's really interesting because it involves historically, Robert Stevenson, who went to Tampa Bay in this deal, really made his mark as a Red. Wildly inconsistent. When he is on, he's as good as it gets as far as a bridge reliever goes. I wouldn't call him a leverage reliever, but he has good stuff. And given Tampa Bay's track record of finding broken pitchers and fixing them and making them into great pitchers or role pitchers, if you will. I think that was a great pickup for the Tampa Bay Rays. The Pirates, it kind of benefited them because they were able to bring up some younger pitchers. That Perdomo kid is a beast. He throws hard. He's a big guy. My guess is they're going to ease him into leverage situations. So really, it opened up a spot for the Pirates. And when you have a team like the Pirates that are coming out of a rebuild, you need to start making room for players in your system. And I think this kind of facilitated that. Coming back to Pittsburgh was Caleb Williams. Now, he was the 38th pick overall, I believe. I think it was 38th. First round supplemental pick, for the Rays. He was a star in Arizona. I mean, I thought he was going to just fly through the system. By most accounts, Williams was the best glove in the Tampa Bay Rays system. And that's saying a lot because the Rays have some terrific middle infielders and terrific defensive players in their system. He has not hit as expected. My guess is coming to Pittsburgh, they're going to work on that. If the Pirates have done anything, they have been sort of the Rays of as far as offense goes. They fix some broken and flawed prospects and turn them into productive major league players. Even if he doesn't hit much, even if he's hitting in the 230s, and with decent on base percentage numbers, Williams has the glove that could supplant O'Neal Cruz once he heals from his ankle injury. From shortstop, move him to first base. Remember when the Blue Jays moved Vladimir Guerrero Jr. from third base to first base? Some of it was defensive, but a lot of it was to try to keep him healthy. So if you move Cruz to first and you have Williams at short, and they have some other guys in their system that can also step up and fill in, I think you're looking at then having two really great, versatile utility players in Castro and Tucapito Mercado, who they got from the Padres, and therefore you've got more role players, and now the Pirates are sort of solidifying their major league roster and what it's going to look like over the next year or two or three. I mean, you've got players that are gotten experience as quasi regulars, but eventually slide into utility roles and bench player roles. So this was an interesting deal. I mean, not a big blockbuster per se, but it's the kind of deal you come to expect from Ben Cherington. There, he has done just a marvelous job with this Pirates rebuild. Because again, he and Williams, handles the business end of it, they've completely remade this organization. It's almost like they built an expansion team. That's how far the Pirates had slid by the time Cherington was brought in after they fired the previous regime and got rid of Clint Hurdle, in the dugout. I mean, they've just done a marvelous job. So even though you maybe don't know much about either player, I think Stevenson could be a really good opener for Tampa Bay. But this is an NL Central podcast. We're going to talk more about how it affected the Pirates. It opened up some of the log jam for pitchers that aren't going to be there once the Pirates continue and get closer to being a contender on a regular basis. I think getting Williams for him could almost erase a little bit of the pain and suffering from the Chris Archer deal. There's also a lot of prospects being brought up or being brought back up in the case of the Cardinals. Jordan Walker is back up. Why they sent him down is just another one of those mysteries as to what's going on with this Cardinals organization. They also brought up Luden Baker. They brought back up Juan Yepes, who had some major league time last year. My guess is that the Cardinals are going to seriously consider taking a step back, kind of reimagining what their club is. They certainly have some depth in the outfield in their system that they could deal for major league pieces, or perhaps even deal for minor leaguers that will progress in. I mean, the Cardinals system is okay, but it's not what it once was. And certainly they're not producing the pitchers the way that they always had in the years. So we had those guys come up, and then talk about NL Central. I think the central part of prospect promotion is Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, we had Matt McLain earlier in the season, a couple of weeks ago. He's going nuts. He's such a great defender, and he's a solid hitter showing some pop. Then they brought up Andrew Abbott. And for those of you that follow college baseball, great pitcher at Virginia. He had a wonderful debut. 51 pitches through 2 innings, but he still finished 6 innings, 105 pitches, only give up 1 hit. And the Brewers lineup can be iffy, but certainly over the weekend, the Brewers, and we'll talk about that series a little bit later, they were putting up some runs there at Great American Pinball Machine Park in Cincinnati. So it'll be fun, just even having those two guys. But the guy, Elly De La Cruz, was promoted on Tuesday of this week. I watched him play a couple innings before coming in to record this podcast. He already has a triple and a homer. In his second game, he doubled and ripped a couple of balls, a couple of foul balls, well over 110, and then his double went for 112 miles as far as exit velocity goes. I mean, I don't put a lot of weight exit velocity, but this kid can fly around the bases. He may be the best prospect that's been brought up in the 20s. And there's a lot of great rookies that have come up, and Julio Rodriguez is a terrific ball player out in Seattle, but De La Cruz is special. It'll be interesting to see whether he plays third and they keep McLean at short. I mean, McLean certainly could play third, but I think it makes more sense for De La Cruz to play third. I think Senzel is banged up. Senzel may also be now looking at a utility role, getting some time in the outfield, whatever it is. We're gonna sort of do a deeper investigation into Cincinnati here in a little bit later in the show, but Cincinnati keeps bringing these guys up, and they're giving them real opportunities. So it'll be interesting to see, can these young players convince their front office to go for it? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. I want to break down two of the series that happened over the weekend. And I think you have to put a lot more importance on series within your division now because you're playing fewer games against your divisional opponents. Uh, Believe me, eventually this novelty and excitement about having teams outside of your division, seeing them every single year, that's going to wane away, especially for teams that are contending for division titles. You want those extra 4 or 5 games to be able to make a dent. If you're behind, make a dent. If you're ahead, kind of put some cushion between you and the competition. But there were two series. There was the Pirates and the Cardinals. Pirates swept the Cardinals. And that, I think that series more than anything else has an impact as to what both teams may do here going forward. At one point after the weekend, the Pirates were in first place by a half game. They have now fallen behind the Brewers. They've inexplicably lost 2 of 3 to the Oakland Athletics, who are historically bad this season. They may set all kind of records for being bad, but not this, not the last 3 days here against the Pirates. But the Pirates have shown they're not afraid. They play an exciting brand of baseball. They're very opportunistic. Nolan Arenado had 2. I think only one was called an error, but in essence, there were 2 errors that led directly to Pirates runs that put them ahead or helped increase the lead. That's what contending teams, that's what the division contenders do. So for the Pirates to sweep the Cardinals, it wasn't necessarily easy or pretty at all times. They had to come from behind on Friday night. It looked, early on. I mean, the Cardinals were up 5-0, and then the Pirates just did not give up. Brian Hayes, they've finally given up on the experiment of trying to make him a leadoff hitter. I think they've got other players that can fill that role now. Brian Hayes is starting to show some pop, showing that he does have that pop in his bat. And if you remember his dad, he wasn't, a feared home run hitter, but he could drill some balls in the gap. Brian Hayes seems to be a chip off the old block. He's already the best defensive third baseman in baseball. And yes, I understand that Nolan Arenado is in the NL Central. Brian Hayes is not just the best defensive third baseman in the NL Central. He's the best, or the National League. He's the best defensive third baseman in baseball. And he just keeps getting better. And he makes it seem so natural and so easy. So looks like Hayes is starting to flash the promise with the bat that led the Pirates to extend him. But the Pirates came back. He had a big 3-run homer, 7-5, and you could see the Cardinals when they were at the end of the game walking out of the dugout back to their clubhouse. There were a lot of heads being hung. So if you were a Pirate fan and you were watching this particular game and you're looking at the series, you started to believe again. I understand why Pirate fans don't want to let themselves believe at this point. They don't want to hear about what a great job Ben Cherington has done and what he did to create the Toronto Blue Jays. He was very instrumental in drafting. And in fact, if you notice, a lot of Blue Jays cast-offs end up in Pittsburgh at some point for a trial. They've been through so much. They've seen so many players go out the door. It's time to start believing, Pirate fans. Don't get yourself all. Don't let that smoke coming in from the Canadian wildfires, distract you from the wonderful things going on the field. You proved this weekend that you guys are for real. On Saturday, it was a great game, a 4-3 win. It was the second straight day that Brian Hayes had homered, and there was a kind of a freak storm that came up, and that could have potentially caused a problem for the Pirates. Luis Ortiz started. He only went 2 innings before the storm just came out of nowhere. And I live not far from PNC Park. I can almost see it from the top of the hill where I live in the South Hills of the city of Pittsburgh. I think it did affect the Cardinals more than it affected the Pirates, though, because Jordan Montgomery was pitching really well. But having that hour delay, I think he got out of a rhythm a little bit. But the Pirates bullpen, which has been amazing all season long, the Pirates bullpen literally, as a whole, saves Pirate wins. I mean, the Pirates are still struggling a little bit trying to find, a regular rotation. Rich Hill has had his moments, certainly on Sunday in this series he did. Some of the younger pitchers, not so much. Mitch Keller has been great, though he's been had a couple of rough outings in a row now. So there's really only 2 pitchers that the Pirates and Derek Shelton can count on right now. But the bullpen has been unbelievable. So a guy like Robert Stevenson, who on a lot of teams can fill a very valuable multi-inning role, he can be dispatched for a guy that like Akil Williams, that can help you later. But then you have these younger pitchers coming up. Some injuries have allowed some young guys to establish themselves, but they've got Colin Holderman, the Mets cast off. They have Moreta. They have a Rule 5 kid, Jose Hernandez, that's been really, really good. I talked about Perdomo, who just got called up after the Stevenson trade. There's Ramirez in that bullpen. The Pirates bullpen is terrific, and they truly saved. They gave them 7 very strong, very effective innings. The Cardinals never really got their equilibrium after the rain delay. They lost that game to 4-3. Then on the Peacock Sunday game, the Sunday brunch game that starts at 11:30, Rich Hill outdueled Miles Mikolas. I mean, again, Mikolas gave up 10 hits, but somehow didn't allow a whole lot of runs. Rich Hill gave 7 solid, 6 shutouts, 7 solid innings, helped the bullpen rest to a degree. David Bednar had 3 saves. He pitched in every game in this Cardinal series, because I think Derek Shelton and every player in that organization know how important that series was. And the main takeaway from that series, I'm going to use a little prop for you folks there on our YouTube channel. So I'm holding a St. Louis Cardinals cap. I am sticking a fork in it. The Cardinals are done, people. And I know St. Louis fans are up in arms. Oh, it's only June. Oh, it's early. You don't know. Nobody knows. It's like, the famous Ted Lasso thing. If everybody knew the results, players would make as much money. It's true. Nobody really knows. But the Cardinals have had so many melodrama moments and so many missteps already, despite having Goldschmidt and Arenado and Edman. They're just a mess. Marmol his place is not in a major league bullpen. I can understand it being an organization man. His place is not in a major league dugout, at least not at this point. I think the front office is starting to realize, okay, hey, we're good. We've got some good talent here. Maybe we need to step back for a year or two, reimagine what our club needs to look like, and perhaps they could get some pieces here at the deadline. The Cardinals are done. The biggest lie in baseball is it's early. If it's the first series, first three games of the year, okay, then you can say it's early. It's June, Cardinal fans. You can't write it off anymore and just say, oh, it's early. Well, we'll get turned around. Jack Flaherty has his moments. Again, I don't think he's fully recovered from his arm injury. Adam Wainwright maybe stayed 1 year too long. Maybe he should have gone with Yadier Molina and retired at the same time. Their bullpen's just a disaster. I think there are a lot of players that are underperforming or they're hurt. It's time for the Cardinals to realize, okay, we've dug ourselves this hole. Let's reinforce the walls of this hole, and try to weather the storm here. Otherwise, these walls are going to become a grave, and we're going to be in serious trouble if we don't react intelligently. Which, of course, it's Central Intelligence here. We always recommend. It's hard to talk about the Cardinals and saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe you need to not rebuild. You need to reimagine. You need to step back. Maybe be willing to weather a year like 2023 and maybe another year and like next year and set yourself up to be the powerhouse in the division. There's a lot of young talent in this division. The Cardinals just can't keep assuming that in the end the Cardinals will come out ahead. I don't think they have the team. They don't have the manager. I have questions about their farm system, whether they're actually producing talent that's going to be ready at the major league level. So maybe it's time for them to reimagine. So I put away the fork for now, but I'm going to bring that fork out a lot when we're talking about the Cardinals. The other series of note took place in Cincinnati, and it involved obviously the Cincinnati Reds and the division-leading Milwaukee Brewers. This was a fun series. You had the crazy 10-8 game, on Saturday. On Friday, you saw the Brewers win it in extra innings. The Reds still almost won it in the bottom of the 11th, but you had some big hits. Joey Weimer, who we're going to go into detail a little bit later, had a terrific game. It seems that every game, somebody else steps up. And you have a terrific in-game manager in Craig Counsell that is really adept at making substitutions, posting lineups based on matchups, but then making in-game substitutions. He's a great strategist. He sees things that are going to happen 2 innings ahead of what is actually happening on the field. The really weird part of this game happened when Corbin Burnes got thrown out. Burnes made a terrific diving catch of an infield pop-up. And he was pumped up because he was coming out of a situation that really could have resulted in the Brewers putting away the game much earlier and not going the extra innings. So he just, in a fit of emotion, slammed the ball down on the grass after making the catch. And the ump threw him out. I understand after a called strike, and equipment, you can't throw your equipment, you can't slam your helmet. Okay. You still should be able to do that, but I understand it's an unwritten rule that you don't do that. And umpires will many times throw you out. But to show that kind of emotion and make a great play and then have Burnes, again, should he have done that? I don't. Again, he was really involved. He was really excited about getting out of that situation. That really could have impacted this game. The Brewers could have lost the game once Burnes went out. On Saturday, it was just runs back and forth, back and forth. Brewers jumped out early. Then the Reds came rallying back. A lot of homers, a lot of great base running. I'm not a big fan of 10-8 or crazy, double-digit scores like that. But given the situation, it being a division game, and you've got a team on the rise in the Cincinnati Reds, and you've got the Brewers trying to hold off the Pirates, but basically trying to take advantage of the situation that the Cardinals and even the Cubs to a lesser degree have given to them, saying, "Well, here, we're messing up. You try to take advantage of it." The Brewers are that kind of team; they're going to do that. So you had terrific games Friday and Saturday. Sunday, Adam Howe, that was terrific for Milwaukee. They needed a solid outing from a starting pitcher, in this series. I mean, their bullpen is unbelievable, but they're getting to the point they're starting to show fatigue. They're starting to leave balls up in the zone or walking more batters than they had earlier in the year. I mean, it's not a crisis yet, but because they've had such a plague of injuries in their starting rotation, they've had to depend on the bullpen. And like we were talking about with the Pirates, even more so, the Brewers bullpen saved their season with the effectiveness that they've had. I mean, everybody knows Devin Williams. There's a lot of great role pitchers in that bullpen that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So the Brewers kind of put the Reds in their place, but the Reds didn't roll over and play dead. The Reds did try to fight back. And they brought up their number one pitching prospect, Andrew Abbott, to pitch on Monday. One hit, 6-inning performance, 105 pitches. He did walk. He struck out 6, did walk 4. But really, after the first 2 innings, Abbott showed why the Reds have so much faith in him. They already have a bona fide ace. They have Hunter Green. But Abbott, I had the pleasure of watching him play all through his college career. He's a terrific pitcher. Doesn't just throw hard. He knows how to pitch already at such a young age. And that helped salvage that game for the Reds. And it certainly gave them the confidence to then go out to LA and put the hurting that they put on the Dodgers so far. I mean, the series isn't over, but certainly the Reds are showing, these young kids are showing, hey, we're ready. This is our time. We've bided our times in the minors. This is our time. So don't think that you're going to push around the Reds as easily as you have in the past. I mean, I remember the Reds being involved in the Field of Dreams game. Because, I mean, again, Major League Baseball tries to tie in these historical things that don't really apply now. But in essence, its story was based about the Black Sox players that were forbidden to play. Therefore, they came to play, on that field in Iowa. And the Reds were their opponent in that 1919 World Series. So there was a little historical tie-in. But that Reds team that I saw play in that game, and I get to see them a lot. Living in Pittsburgh, I get to see every NL Central team, on a regular basis. That team last year is nothing like this team this year. And that is why, getting to the heart of the order, the heart of our podcast here, there are 2 NL Central teams that need to just go for it in 2023. One, you would expect that they would, though there's some questions certainly in the offseason as to whether or not they were going to retool. And the other one is a young team that we haven't even seen all of their players up. But we've probably seen their best prospects up, but we haven't seen all of their Major League ready prospects up yet. But let's start with the team that needs to go for it. They're in a position already to win a division. And that's the Milwaukee Brewers. Good old Bernie Brewer. They're in first place in the NL Central right now. And they have Corbin Burnes. The fact that both things are occurring right now should give GM Matt Arnold some pause before he picks up the phone to field offers for the race. And people are going to come calling saying, because I don't know that the Brewers can keep him. So obviously, any smart GM is going to try to make a phone call and say, well, hey, what do you think? What can you do? I mean, the Dodgers are going to call, the Yankees are going to call. I would imagine that you're going to see the Mets, Phillies, and Braves call. The Dodgers will call. He's going to be in demand. There's already a connection between Milwaukee and San Diego, so certainly the Padres could be a player. Anybody that has a legitimate shot at a playoff berth, Houston, Texas, especially now with Jacob DeGrom going through Tommy John surgery, they're all going to call on him. But now, given the opportunity that the quote unquote favorites to win the division, the Cubs and the Cardinals more so than Cubs, they're stumbling a little bit. They're not meeting and playing up to expectations. Given that that is happening, and given that along with Corbin Burns, you have Freddie Peralta and Colin Ray and Adrian Hauser, you have a rotation that can lead you to a division title. They have two pretty interesting young pitchers, down at AAA Nashville. Jansen Junk has already started a game for the Brewers. He had to come up because of injury. He's a guy that I can see being a 5-inning pitcher. Maybe he can give you some length out of the bullpen. And there's a lot of scuttlebutt about that they're going to bring up their number 7 prospect, Robert Gasser, from AAA Nashville. Gasser has had problem with his command. Okay, he has had issues with walks, falling behind in counts, having his pitch counts go up high earlier in the game, but he has the stuff to be a solid, reliable major league pitcher. Julian Teheran is a nice story, reviving his career. You can't use him and help him get you to a division title. I mean, again, he's a guy that can pitch in mop up situations or whatever later, but I mean, he's not the answer. You've got 3, probably 4 legitimate starters in Milwaukee right now. You have a bullpen that has been lights out. Devin Williams is as dominant as he has ever been, and that's saying a lot. There were times that even when Hader was the closer, Williams really was the most effective reliever. And end of last year after the deal, I think he lost his focus, but his focus is back. You've got Bryce Wilson, Joel Payamps, Elvis Peguero, Peter Strzelinski. They've all been reliable. They've been durable, but they can't keep pitching the amount of innings that they are. So the Brewers need to look for go-for-it signals, and it's going to be really around their lineup. They have the thump. They've got Christian Yelich, former MVP. They have Brian Anderson, who's not a 40 home run guy, but he's going to get you 20, and he's going to drive in some key runs. Rowdy Tellez, I don't know if he sold his soul to the devil to have this career revival. I mean, having covering the Blue Jays as I do for another project, I've never seen this Rowdy Tellez. Even at the end of 2019, when he sort of had a hot streak there, I've never seen consistent performance from Rowdy Tellez like I've seen the second half of last year and so far this year. They've got Owen Miller and Andrew Monasterio. They've earned everyday roles to be everyday players. And personally, I think Owen Miller should be an all-star. Hitting over 300, can play multiple positions, play them well. But really, it's going to be 2 bats that will turn Milwaukee from probable division winners into a possible first-round bye position. Take them to the NLCS. and that's Willie Adames and Joey Wiemer. Adames has been activated from the 7-day concussion IL after just an absolutely scary incident. I saw him struck in the head by a line drive into the dugout. He rehabbed, showed no ill effects. Adames has MVP talent. I really believe that. I believe that when he was with Tampa. I think Tampa, when you have Wander Franco, it's hard not to take advantage. But again, Tampa was able to get from Milwaukee some valuable bullpen pieces. Adames is a difference maker. But for me, of course, we've got Ellie De La Cruz. So as I thought about this, I had this statement in my head and I jotted down the notes about it. For me, Joey Wiemer is the most exciting rookie, certainly in the NL Central, and probably in the National League. Now with De La Cruz and maybe Matt McLain, that could change as far as position players go. But if he can put it all together this season, you are going to hearken back, Brewer fans and NL Central fans, to the days of Harvey Wallbangers. Okay, he reminds me so much of Gorman Thomas. He has better hair than Gorman Thomas, but he has breathtaking power. He patrols center field with the best of them. I mean, he's already an above average, shown flashes of Gold Glove caliber defense in center field. He's struggling. His average is right around the Mendoza line. He has had some big hits. He's shown a lot of power, and he's so positive and he's so charismatic. Joey Wiemer literally could take this team to the NLCS. He could put this lineup on his back, and he could take this team to the NLCS. So for all of those reasons, the Brewers need to go for it. They need to get another starter if possible. Not necessarily big budget. Maybe even look to the Pirates, to Rich Hill. Offer some pieces that will fit into the Ben Cherington puzzle. Because I think Ben Cherington is methodical enough that is a wonderful season and as big a surprise as the Pirates have been. I just don't see him going all in at this point. I'm sure he'll make moves and additions he already has. I don't think he's a GM that at this point is going to go for it. It'd be interesting if he does, especially if this is Kutch's last year. It will be very, very interesting. But the other team that I think really needs to go for it is the Cincinnati Reds. And we talked earlier in the podcast about, their young talent. First it was Matt McLain, excuse me. Then it was Brian Williamson, who I think will get better the more comfortable he becomes. I think he will become a more consistent pitcher. He's already had a couple of really good outings. He's had some clunkers. But I really think Brian Williamson can do a lot of things. This past Monday, we talked about the Andrew Abbott start. We're only going to see more of those kind of performances from Abbott. And then the crown jewel of the Red system, Ellie De La Cruz, came up on Tuesday. Charismatic. He just exudes star. He's going to be a fun player to watch. He's going to be an exciting player to watch. Again, he won't have the type of season that his first two games have been, I don't think. If he does, watch out, NL Central, watch out all National League teams. He doubled in his first game. He tripled and homered in the second game against the Dodgers. Okay, he wasn't playing, a bottom feeder. This was against the Dodgers that he has had these big games right away. And then added to that mix of guys that we just mentioned, you've got more seasoned youngsters like Jonathan India and Spencer Steers, TJ Friedl, if he can ever stay healthy, Tyler Stevenson, Christian Encarnacion Strand, and you have the team of the future in the NL Central. I really believe that the Reds have everything that they need to be the Tampa Bay Rays of the National League. Nick Kroll has so many assets in his farm system that he cannot touch the guys at the top of the system that haven't come up yet. You know, the Connor Phillips, the Levi Stewarts, the Welby Marte. Though I think Marte's blocked now with McLean and Senzel and De La Cruz up. Michael Ciani could fill in as an outfield. Matt Karchner's another pitcher that I think could contribute this year out of the bullpen. And these are just guys that potentially could play this year, if not the beginning of next year, start the break camp with the Reds. They're way beyond a top 30 prospect, especially down at the lower levels. Their future is secure. The guys we're seeing now are more the result of former GM Dick Williams' draft. I think he's kind of been vilified in Cincinnati for I don't want to say, I called a mistake. You know, he tried to bring a lot of veterans in and try to go for it and try to fill those holes while some of the younger players are being filtered into the scheme of things. But the Reds, they're not quite the Orioles and Rays. They're really, really close. And with that kind of depth, you can go out and you can get a Dylan Cease. I mean, again, I'm saying Corbin Burnes shouldn't be traded, you know, because it's within the division, and I think that Burnes holds the cards for the Brewers' future, as far at least I shouldn't say the future for this year. They have that prospect depth, but they can get a veteran bat. They can get some veteran relievers to help, you know, settle things. I mean, though they've had some great performances. I mean, Alexis Diaz, he is just death to ninth inning rallies. Forget it. I mean, if the Reds are ahead, I pretty much assume the Reds are going to win that game. He's been that good. But the other thing that Kroll and Reds fans and the Reds organization need to consider, and I'm a big believer in this, what better way to know exactly what these prospects can do, the kind of performances that you can come to expect from them, then put them into a pennant race, have the light shining on them, and see what they can do. Prospects are just that. They're prospects until they prove they can do it at the major league level. The Reds are already showing that the guys that Kroll has put together and the leftovers from the Dick Williams era, these guys are ready for prime time right now. The lineup is aided by the ballpark, absolutely. So go out and get a veteran stopper. So if you've got a veteran that can come in there, people that have been there before, again, I use Dylan Cease as an example, but there's all kind of pitchers that are out there that can kind of fall into line there. Bieber, I think the Guardians are open if they don't start hitting on a more regular basis. They've had a lot of injuries to their rotation. I would imagine that Bieber could be had. And for the Indians, the kind of organization that the Indians are, trade with your cross-state rivals. Get some good young pieces to bolster what you already have in your system, Cleveland. And the Reds could suddenly not just be the fun story. They could be the team that chases down the Brewers or puts the most pressure on the Brewers. But they're going to have to go for it. They've got Hunter Green. They have Abbott. They have Williamson. A solid, big time, big game veteran pitcher would be a wonderful get at the trade deadline. These kids are going to hit. Are they going to have some slumps? Are they going to have some inconsistencies? Yes, there's enough bench depth that they can rotate guys through. I didn't even talk about Rayleigh. He's had a terrific year. Does Joey Votto come back in a situation like this? I kind of figured that Votto was going to maybe make a September Swan Song appearance, but does this kind of speed up the timeline in Joey Votto's mind? Saying, look, I could be part of something very special in this last year of my career. I mean, having Votto come back off the injured list and be able to play, that's as big as a get as you would ever get in the trade deadline. So, just something to contemplate, NL Central fans. I think Brewer fans know what they have. And I think one last hurrah with Corbin Burnes on the roster, I think that it would really set this team up for perhaps being a spender, not a big money spender, but perhaps trying to add to the core that they're trying to develop. They've got some arms. They've got some players at AAA that could assume roles within the next 2 to 3 years. But have one last hurrah when you've got Corbin Burnes, for sure, as a for sure thing, rather than hoping you can re-sign him. I think you go for it. And if you're the Reds, no one is going to want to play the Reds. Because quite honestly, all the fans in the stands are going to fall in love with this Reds team. And I think the best way to truly see what they have with their prospects. I mean, again, De La Cruz, great start. Abbott, McLean, Steers is having a great year. All of the Jonathan India is solid. All of these players, put them on the big stage. See what you really have. And then become adept. I think Kroll is, he was in the Billy Bean Oakland A's system at a certain point. He knows how sometimes in a small market you need to have young players available, but you need to supplement them with veterans. I think he's been in that situation and been around those decisions. The Reds could make a huge impact at the deadline and straight through till October if they choose to do it. Maybe they don't choose to do that. Yeah, I mean, you can't blame them. I'm not saying gut the farm system, but they literally have that many tools that in essence they can trade them. And they're not really going to miss them in the short term. Maybe in the long term they come back and haunt you. But in the short term, Cincinnati Reds, go for it, guys. I'll be at PNC Park to watch you doing it whenever you come back here to play the Pirates. I'll be here to watch you do it. They're going to be a fun team to watch going down the stretch. I think it's time to call this game on account of darkness. I am Steve Beck, the host of Central Intelligence. We're here every week to talk NL Central baseball. And here's hoping that your team does something this coming week that gets us talking about them on the next Central